The single mom waitress cried while cleaning the mafia boss closed the restaurant at 8 p.m. The tears came without permission, hot and silent, stinging the chemical burn on my hands. I was folded in half, scrubbing a grease stain near the base of booth 4 that refused to surrender. It was stubborn, baked into the cheap linoleum, just like the exhaustion baked into my bones. My back screamed a dull, constant ache. My knees, pressed against the cold floor, felt bruised right through my thin black pants. Above the kitchen pass-through, the cheap plastic wall clock made a sharp click. The long minute hand aligned perfectly with the 8 o'clock. Closing time on a Tuesday in Mariner City, for everyone else. Maybe for me. It meant at least another 2 hours of side work, of wiping ketchup bottles and refilling salt shakers, before I could catch the late bus back to Dockside Courts, back to Lila. I swiped at my eyes with the back of my wrist, leaving a damp, bleach-smelling streak across my face. That's when the bell above the door jangled. It was the wrong sound, too loud, too aggressive for the end of the night. I pushed myself up, my joints cracking in protest. 3 men. They did not bother waiting to be seated. They spread out, a greasy tide filling the entrance, instantly sucking the tired warmth out of the diner. They wore cheap suits that strained across their thick shoulders, but their hands were expensive. On the right hand of each man, a heavy silver ring carved into the shape of a striking hawk. The Kestrel outfit. My stomach turned to ice water. The wet rag in my hand suddenly weighed 50 pounds. The leader, a man with a face like spoiled concrete and eyes like 2 tiny chips of glass, leaned over the counter. He picked up my tip jar. It was an old pickle jar, the glass fogged with grime, a crayon drawing of a seagull taped to the front, Lila's work. He shook it. The sound of quarters and a few dollar bills rattled like tiny bones. "Light night, Mara," he sneered, his voice a gravelly rasp. "Hard to pay off Rhett's mess when the tips are this thin." I gripped the rag, my knuckles white. "I told your man. I get paid Friday. I can give you 20 then." 20? The man laughed, a dry, barking sound that had no humor in it. He dumped the contents of the jar onto the counter. My meager earnings. Rhett's medical bills were deep, and interest. Mara, interest compounds. He slid one of my quarters across the formica, flicking it. "We heard you got a kid. Lila. Cute name." My breath hitched. "She's 6. Right," he continued, his eyes locking onto mine. "Be a damn shame if she had to, pay for her daddy's mistakes. Maybe we just hold on to these tips as a down payment." The air left my lungs. The threat hung there, thick and oily as the grease I had been scrubbing. They were not just threatening my money anymore. They were threatening her. The bell jangled again. This time, it was a whisper. The 3 thugs stiffened, their shoulders tensing. I looked past them. A man stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 others. The 2 on the side were built like industrial refrigerators, their suits immaculate, their eyes scanning everything and seeing nothing. The man in the middle, though he was different. He was not big, he was precise. His suit was a dark, expensive gray, tailored so perfectly it seemed to move with him, and he carried a silence that was louder than the Kestrel's threats. He looked at the 3 thugs, then his gaze slid to me. His eyes were dark, and for a split second I felt completely exposed. He did not just see the tears I had wiped away, he saw the raw, red rims of my eyes. He saw the terror that was making my knees weak, and then, beneath it, he saw the spark, the part of me that was calculating how hard I would have to swing the glass coffee pot to make it count. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to, and he spoke to Dory, our grill cook, who was frozen by the fry station. "We're closing at 8, Adrian Caravello said." His voice was like cold steel, not loud, just absolute. It was 8:03. Dory just nodded, her hands shaking as she fumbled with her apron strings. One of Adrian's men stepped forward, peeling bills from a thick money clip and handing them to Dory, then to Janine, the other server. "For your time." the guard murmured. To the 2 remaining customers in the back booth, the guard was polite but firm. "The kitchen is closed, gentlemen. Your tab is covered. The tavern across the street is expecting you." They grabbed their jackets and scrambled out, not making eye contact with anyone. The Kestrel leader turned, trying to regain his footing. "Hey, this is our business, a private transaction." Adrian Caravello stepped fully into the light. He finally looked at the leader. "No, this is my territory." He tilted his head, a slight, curious motion, as if observing a bug. "And this territory doesn't trade on women working double shifts." He looked at the spilled tips on the counter. "Clean it up and leave." "You don't know who you're—" the thug started, puffing his chest out. Adrian cut him off. "I know exactly who you are." He gestured slightly with his chin toward the corner of the ceiling, just above the pie case. A small, black dome, a camera. It was not one of ours. Our system was old. The cameras yellowed plastic, half of them broken. This one was new, sleek, with a tiny, glowing red light. A small, stylized V was embossed on the side. Vermilion security. The Kestrel leader's face went from red to a sickly pale. The anger was still there, burning in his cheeks, but the fear was stronger. He knew the name. Everyone in Mariner City knew the Mariner Union, and everyone who mattered knew Vermilion was their eyes. He roughly swept my tips back into the jar, his movements clumsy, knocking it over. He did not apologize. He just turned, signaled his 2 goons, and pushed his way out the door. The bell jangled furiously in his wake. I sagged against the counter, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me hollow and shaking. "We can't close," I whispered, the panic rising again. "I'll lose the shift. I need the money. I need—" "You're paid," the man, Adrian, said. He moved to the counter, right where the thug had been. He placed a thick, white envelope next to my tip jar. It was heavy. "This covers the shift you lost, and the ones you might have lost." He pushed it toward me. I stared at it. I can't accept this." "It's not a gift." His eyes were unreadable. "It's an exchange. You lost your time. I'm buying it, in return. You're safe. Tonight." Dory and Janine were already gone, vanishing into the damp Oregon night. One of Adrian's men turned the sign in the window to closed. The thud of the deadbolt sliding home echoed in the empty diner. Click, thud. He flipped the switch for the main lights, plunging us into the dim glow of the kitchen safety lights and the neon Juneberry Grill sign bleeding in from outside, the diner, usually a place of chaotic noise, plates clattering, orders yelled. The sizzle of the flat top was suddenly terrifyingly silent. All I could hear was the faint, tinny sound of the jazz station Dory always left on for closing, and the squeak of my own wet rag as I started, numbly, to wipe the counter. "Where do you live?" Adrian asked. "Dockside Courts," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My man Remy will drive you? You and your daughter?" My head snapped up. "No." The word was out before I could stop it, sharp and reflexive. I did not take rides from strangers. I did not take envelopes from strangers, especially not strangers who could make the Kestrel outfit back down. I take the bus. Adrian Caravello watched me. He did not argue. He did not push. He just gave me a look that said he understood my refusal and that it did not matter. It said that the rules of my small, desperate life had just been rewritten. Whether I liked it or not, it said that the Kestrels were not the only predators in the city, and that tonight, for reasons I could not fathom, I had just become something valuable. "As you wish," he said, turning toward the door. I watched him go. His 2 men fell in behind him. They did not speak. They unlocked the door, stepped out, and locked it again from the outside, leaving me alone in the semi-dark. I grabbed the envelope. It was too heavy. I peeked inside. I could not count it, but it was more money than I had seen in a year. My hands were shaking. I finished my side work, my mind blank, moving on autopilot. When I finally pushed open the backstaff door an hour later, the alley was empty. But as I rounded the corner to the bus stop, I saw it. Parked across the street, engine idling in the misty rain, a granite gray sedan. It did not move. It just waited. As I stood there, clutching my backpack, the neon sign above the diner, the Juneberry Grill sign, clicked, sputtered, and went dark. The hum of the city disappeared, replaced by the thrum of that engine. The night was just beginning. The bus ride was a blur of smeared neon and rain-slicked streets. The granite gray sedan stayed 2 blocks behind, never closer, never further. It was a silent, disciplined shadow, a ghost haunting my peripheral vision. I clutched my backpack to my chest, the thick paper rectangle of Adrian Caravello's envelope pressing against my ribs like a hot stone. I did not know what was worse, the Kestrel's open menace or this man's quiet, suffocating protection. I got off at my stop, my sneakers sinking into the sodden grass of the median. The sedan pulled over to the far curb, half a block down, its engine idling. It was not threatening. It was just watching. Dockside Courts loomed out of the fog. It was not so much a building as a monument to decay. Built in the 1960s with a burst of civic optimism, it was now a damp collection of concrete compromises, smelling of mildew and old cabbage. A bright, laminated poster was taped to the cracked plaster wall of the lobby. The Sun Hollow Foundation rebuilding Mariner City, one home at a time. The poster was 3 years old. The only thing the Sun Hollow Foundation had rebuilt was the leasing office sign. The elevator, of course, was broken. It was always broken. I took the stairs, my keys clutched between my fingers like a makeshift weapon, my footsteps echoing in the damp stairwell. I let myself into apartment 4B. The deadbolt slid home with a heavy, metallic groan. It was quiet. Mrs. Petrov, my neighbor, had already put Lila to bed. I paid her the last of my cash, $35, and tiptoed into the bedroom. Lila was asleep, her small face peaceful in the glow of the seashell nightlight. Her breathing was even, a tiny, rhythmic puff of air. That sound, that was the only thing that mattered. The debt had started with that sound, or rather, the lack of it. It had been an ear infection, then another. Then a specialist who used words like chronic and progressive hearing loss. The surgery, he said, was non-negotiable. I had insurance. I worked 2 jobs. I had the state-mandated plan. But then the explanation of benefits arrived, a blizzard of codes and denials, a loophole. The anesthesiologist was out of network. The specific graft material was experimental. The bill was $22,400. I applied for emergency aid from the Urban Welfare Trust. I filled out forms until my hands cramped. I waited in lines for hours, Lila bored and fussy on my hip, just to be seen. A month later, the denial letter came. Application rejected, it read. Incorrect checkmark on page 14, section B. 1 checkmark. I reapplied. They said the funds for the quarter were already gone. That was when Rhett started staying out late. Rhett Cade, my husband. He had a smile that could sell sand in a desert and the spine of a jellyfish. When the bills turned from white envelopes to red ones, he found a solution, not a job, a loan. He met the Kestrel outfit at a bar. They were happy to help. The interest rate was only 20% a week. When the 20% became 40, Rhett stopped answering his phone. When they came knocking, Rhett went out for cigarettes and never came back. He left me everything, the stack of bills, the empty refrigerator, and a string of text messages from his shark. The last one I received, before I blocked the number, just said, "We know where you work. We know where she sleeps." I kissed Lila's forehead, the smell of her strawberry shampoo anchoring me. I was a failure. I was a mother who could not keep her child safe. I used to dream of kitchens, not the Juneberry's greasy flat top, but real ones. I had 2 semesters of culinary school under my belt before Lila came. I knew the difference between a brunoise and a julienne. I knew how to build a sauce, how to balance acid and fat, but dreams do not pay for out-of-network surgeons. So I became a waitress, and when the minimum wage, $7.50 an hour plus tips, did not cover the rent and the interest payments. I picked up the cleaning shift, too. I scrubbed floors for the privilege of being threatened by men who wore hawk rings. The envelope from Caravello was on my tiny kitchen table. I still had not opened it. I was terrified of what it meant. The next morning, the Juneberry grill was buzzing. Dory, our head cook, was flipping pancakes with a controlled fury. Dory was a woman built of compressed energy. She had soft, grandmotherly eyes, but forearms corded with muscle from hoisting 50-pound sacks of flour. She did not look up when I punched in. "You okay, kid?" she asked, her voice low over the sizzle of bacon. "Fine, Dory." "Bullshit!" She scraped the grill clean with a sharp, metallic shriek. "Last night was not fine. I've worked this block for 30 years. I know the Kestrels, and I know the Mariner Union." She plated 3 over-easies and hit the service bell. "Let me tell you something. Mara, when a man like Adrian Caravello walks into a diner at 8 p.m. and closes it down just because a waitress is crying, that is not a favor. That is a signal." "A signal for what?" Dory finally looked at me, her gaze sharp enough to cut. "It means you are his property now, whether you like it or not." My stomach twisted. "I'm not anyone's property." "Good," Dory said, turning back to her eggs. "Keep believing that. It might keep you alive." My shift was tense. I kept looking at the door, expecting the Kestrels to return. They did not. But someone else did. Around 2 p.m., during the afternoon lull, one of Caravello's men from last night slid into booth 4, the one I had been scrubbing. He was the bigger one, the one built like an industrial refrigerator. He ordered coffee. I poured it, my hand surprisingly steady. "Mister, Caravello wanted you to have this," he said. His voice was a low rumble, like gravel shifting. His name was Remy. He slid a business card across the table. It was not paper. It felt like thin, black metal in the center. Just the stylized V logo and a 10-digit phone number. Vermilion. "What is this?" "It's a hotline," and he said, not touching his coffee. "You see the Kestrels again. You call it. You see anyone who makes you nervous. You call it, 'Do not call the cops. Call this.'" I stared at the card. It felt dangerous, heavy. "And what happens when I call—" "We happen," Remy said. He stood up, leaving a $10 bill on the table for a $2 coffee. He does not like seeing his interests threatened. Dory's words echoed in my head. Property, interests. I stuffed the card into my apron, the sharp metal corner digging into my hip. When I got home that night, Lila was awake. She ran to the door and hugged my legs, burying her face in my apron. "Captain," she yelled, her voice bright. It was her name for me, because, she said, I was the boss of our ship, apartment 4B. "Hey, baby." I picked her up, my one true thing in a world of grease and debt. She smelled like crayons and apple juice, and for a second, the fear receded. She had a drawing for me. It was our building, but in her version, the sun was shining, and there were seagulls flying over the roof, dozens of them. She was obsessed with the seagulls down at the marina, their sharp cries and the way they owned the sky. I taped the drawing to the peeling paint of the refrigerator. This was why. This small, perfect human. I would scrub 1,000,000 floors. I would face 100 Kestrels. I would even deal with Adrian Caravello. I would do anything to keep this light, this one small, perfect light, from going out. I put Lila to bed, read her a story about a bear who lost his hat, and kissed her goodnight. I went to the kitchen to finally count the money in the envelope. My hand flew to my mouth. It was $5,000. It was too much. It was enough to pay off the Kestrels entirely. It was enough to breathe. But Dory was right. This was not a gift. I looked out my window, past the rusted fire escape, down to the wet street 4 floors below. The granite gray sedan was gone. In its place, parked directly across from my building under a flickering streetlight, was a black SUV. It had no plates. The windows were tinted so dark they looked like solid panels of obsidian. It was not the Kestrels. Their cars were loud and cheap. It was not Caravello's men. Their car was gray and precise. This was something new. My blood ran cold. I backed away from the window, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled the vermilion card from my pocket, its metal edge cold against my palm. Someone was watching me. The Kestrels had been hunting me for money, but Adrian Caravello, by closing the diner at 8, had just signaled to the whole dark underworld of Mariner City that I was something else. I was no longer just a waitress in debt. I was a signal, and now someone was signaling back. The black SUV from the night before was gone by 5 a.m. when I left for my morning shift, but the fear it left behind was a cold knot in my stomach. I walked the 8 blocks to the Juneberry Grill feeling like I had a target painted on my back. The $5,000 from Caravello's envelope sat on my nightstand, untouched. I could not bring myself to use it. It felt less like a rescue and more like a down payment. The diner was slammed. The 9 o'clock breakfast rush was a chaotic symphony of sizzling bacon, clattering plates, and Dory yelling, "Order up!" We were in the weeds, scrambling to keep coffee cups full. At 9:34, the bell on the door jangled, but not with the rhythm of a hungry customer. 2 men in ill-fitting gray suits, the kind that always look wrinkled, stepped inside. They carried matching black clipboards. "Department of Municipal Compliance," the taller one announced to the room, flashing a laminated badge. "We're here for a surprise food safety inspection." The diner went quiet. Dory froze, spatula in midair. "We were just inspected last month," Dory said, her voice tight. "We got an A rating." "We received an anonymous tip," the shorter man said, his eyes already scanning the room with a predatory glee. He was looking for violations, complaints of improper food storage and pest activity. "Pests," I said, gripping a coffee pot. "We've never had—" "Ma'am, please," he snapped, cutting me off. He pointed his pen at the kitchen. "We're starting with the walk-in and the grease traps." This was not a health inspection. This was a shakedown. This was the Kestrels' revenge, the next move on the board. They could not threaten me physically at the diner, not after Caravello's warning, so they were coming for my job. They were coming to shut us down. My hands started to shake. I could see my job, my only source of income, evaporating. "That's a violation," the tall one said, pointing to Dory's half-full water bottle on the steel prep shelf. "Staff beverages must be covered and stored in a designated area." "And that," the other one chimed in, pointing to a hairline crack in one of the floor tiles near the sink. "Structural hazard, automatic 5-point deduction." "That tile's been cracked for 10 years, Dory argued, her face flushing with anger. "And then you've been in violation for 10 years, the inspector sneered. A voice, calm and bored, cut through the tension from the back of the diner. "Actually, you're mistaken." I turned. I had not even seen him come in. Adrian Caravello was sitting in booth 4, the one I had been scrubbing 2 nights ago. He was not in the severe suit he wore that night. He was dressed in dark trousers and a crisp white shirt, the collar open and the sleeves rolled up his forearms. A thin file rested on the table next to a steaming cup of black coffee. He looked up from his paperwork as if mildly annoyed by the interruption. The 2 inspectors looked confused. "The Mariner City Municipal Code, Article 7, Section C. Grandfathers any establishment built before 1990 against non-critical structural citations," Adrian said, his voice carrying easily through the diner. "That tile is irrelevant." The inspectors glanced at each other, their bravado faltering. "Sir, this is an official—" "And the staff beverage," Adrian continued, holding up a single finger, "is only a violation under Article 14D, which you've confused with 14B. 14D applies to active food preparation services." He gestured with his chin. "That shelf is 2 feet above the prep line, making it a designated storage area. You're citing the wrong bylaw." The lead inspector's face turned a deep, blotchy red. He knew, and he knew that Adrian knew. "We still have to check the walk-in refrigerator for the temperature logs," he stammered, trying to regain control. "You do," Adrian agreed, a pleasant smile touching his lips. It did not reach his eyes. "But you'll need a warrant for that. An anonymous tip does not constitute probable cause for an immediate invasive search. That's Article 3. Or, he leaned back, you could leave, and I could forget to report this procedural misconduct to the city commissioner, who happens to be a very old friend of mine. The silence in the diner was absolute, heavy. The two inspectors looked at Adrian, at the file, at the calm, cold confidence in his eyes. Then they looked toward the front door, where Remy, his bodyguard, was now standing, arms crossed, blocking the exit. The short man snapped his clipboard shut. "We will reschedule." "You do that," Adrian said, his attention already returning to his file. The two men practically ran out of the diner, the bell clanging weakly behind them. Dory let out a breath she seemed to have been holding all morning. She looked at me, then at Adrian, and back to me. "I'm taking a smoke break," she announced, untying her apron. "Everyone, 10 minutes." The diner cleared out, the staff scattering to the alley. I was left alone with him. I walked over to the booth, my legs feeling unsteady. You knew they were coming. "Ari?" "It was the next logical move, Renandat," he said, not looking up. "The Kestrels can't use muscle, so they use bureaucracy. They shut you down. You get fired, you become desperate. Desperate people are messy. I prefer you not to be desperate." "That money," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "The $5,000. "A retainer," he replied. "A retainer for what I'm not for sale." He finally lifted his gaze, and his eyes pinned me. "I know. I'm not buying you. Mara, I'm buying your position. I'm buying the fact that you've scrubbed these floors for 3 years. I'm buying the fact that in this city you're invisible. And I need someone invisible." "What do you want?" "I want Skyward Kitchens." I blinked. "The food delivery app. They sponsor the baseball games. They're on every bus." "They're a front," Adrian said flatly. "A high-tech washing machine for the Kestrel outfit and their upstream partners. They don't just sell food, they use a network of ghost kitchens, unmarked warehouses, failing restaurants like this one to process and launder millions in dirty money through thousands of fake transactions." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "The Kestrels are thugs. Skyward is how they're trying to become an enterprise. I'm going to cut that link. And you think I can help you? I'm a waitress." "That's exactly why," he said. "Tonight, the Sun Hollow Foundation, another Kestrel front, the one that holds the mortgage on your apartment building, is hosting its annual charity fundraiser. It's at the Orpheum Conservatory. The guest of honor is the regional director of Skyward Kitchens, a man named Casper Duval." He slid a small, metallic object across the table. It was dark, milled aluminum, the size of a shirt button. "You're going to work the party. The catering company owes my union a favor. You'll be assigned to the VIP section. Your only job is to get this." He tapped the device onto Casper Duval's briefcase. My blood ran cold. "You want me to plant a bug?" "It's a locator tag, a simple GPS. I just need to know where he goes after the party, where the real office is, not the shiny one downtown." "No." The word came out sharp, instinctive. I took a step back. "Absolutely not. This is your world. This is mafia business. I have a daughter. I won't." "The Kestrels threatened your daughter 2 nights ago," he said, his voice stripped of all pleasantry. "They tried to shut down your job this morning. They own the foundation that can evict you by tomorrow. You are already in this world, Mara. You just have not been fighting back." He was right. God, he was right. I was trapped, and the walls were closing in. He was not offering me a way out. He was offering me a weapon. I gripped the back of the opposing bench, my knuckles white. "Conditions." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "1," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Lila, my daughter. She's nowhere near this. She's safe. You guarantee her safety. If anything happens to her, I don't care what you do to me. The deal is off." "Agreed," he said without hesitation. "Remy will shadow her and her sitter from the moment you leave for the event until you're home. No one gets within a block of her." 2. I took a deep breath. "I don't touch anything else. No. No hot goods, no packages, no money, no drugs. I plant the tag. That is it. And the debt. The 5,000, if I do this, that money is mine, and the kestrels are gone. For good. The kestrels are already gone, he said. I bought Rhett's marker from them yesterday morning. They have no claim on you. The 5,000 is yours, regardless. Consider this. Additional compensation. He pulled a single folded paper from his jacket. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock. He unfolded it. It was not a napkin sketch. It was a formal contract. This is an internal Vermilion security agreement, he said. It outlines your role as a temporary consultant and my personal, binding guarantee of your daughter's safety. He pulled a heavy, black pen from his pocket and signed the bottom with a bold, angular signature. I took the paper. It was absurd, a legal document for an illegal act, but it felt solid in my hand. It was his word, on paper. He spent the next hour training me, his voice low and precise. He was not a thug. He was a general. The room is a map, he said, sketching on a napkin. Staff entrances, bar, stage, exits. You ignore the crowd. You watch the periphery. Who is watching the doors? Their venue security. They're useless. Who is watching the speaker? That's his personal team. Who is watching nobody. But scanning the room, they're the threats, like me. He taught me how to use the weight of a heavy tray to create space, how to anticipate a person's movement by the angle of their shoulders. Duval is the mark. He's arrogant, loves to shake hands. He never lets go of his briefcase. It's an affectation. He thinks it makes him look important. How do I plant the tag if he never lets it go? You won't plant it, Adrian said. You're a waitress. You're invisible. You're going to spill an entire tray of champagne cocktails directly onto him. My eyes widened. What? He'll be furious. His guards will be distracted, focused on you as the threat. In that chaos, he will put the briefcase down for 1 second to check his expensive suit, and you, while apologizing profusely, will kneel to clean the mess. Attach the magnetic tag to the metal frame on the underside, and get out. You have 2 seconds. No more. I let out a shaky breath. Okay, I can do that. Dory found me in the locker room just before 4 o'clock. As my shift was ending, she was holding a black garment bag. Dory, Save it, kid, she said, her voice gruff but her eyes soft. I don't want to know the details, but I know a society party when I hear one. You cannot go to the Orpheum Conservatory in your polyester uniform. She unzipped the bag. Inside was a dress. It was a deep, midnight blue, made of a heavy silk that shimmered under the single fluorescent bulb. It was simple, elegant, and cut for a professional server, but it was the most beautiful thing I had ever touched. It was my daughter's, Dory said, her voice softening, from when she worked catering at the hotel, before she moved to Seattle. It'll fit. I changed, the silk sliding over my skin. It felt like armor. When I walked out of the locker room, Adrian was waiting by the front door, shrugging into his own suit jacket. He stopped, he looked at me, and for a split second, the strategist, the boss, disappeared. He just looked. I smoothed the dress down, suddenly self-conscious. Will it work? He cleared his throat, and the mask was back. His eyes were professional, sharp. It will work. He held the front door open, the late afternoon light spilling in. A black car was idling at the curb. Just one more thing, Mara, he said as I passed him. What? No crying tonight. His voice was low, almost gentle, but the words were pure steel. Warriors do not cry before the fight. The Orpheum Conservatory was not a diner. It was a cathedral of money. All marble floors, vaulted glass ceilings, and the muted, expensive hush of the very rich. The air smelled of hothouse lilies and old money. I stood in the service staging area, a cavernous space behind the main hall, feeling like a crow in a flock of swans. Dory's midnight blue dress fit perfectly, but the silk felt foreign against my skin. Too smooth, too fine. I held the silver tray, heavy with at least 20 champagne flutes, my arm already burning. This was different from balancing burger plates. This was a precision exercise. You're holding your breath. I jumped, the glasses clinking softly. Adrian Caravello was standing beside me, materialized from the shadows of the kitchen pass-through. He was in a black tuxedo, not a suit. The severe cut of it made him look less like a gangster and more like a surgeon. "I'm not," I whispered, my voice tight. "You are," he said, his eyes on my hand, not my face. "You're locking your elbow. You're carrying the weight in your shoulder. You'll be shaking in 10 minutes. He stepped closer. The air compressed around us. He did not ask for permission. He reached out and placed his hand over mine, his fingers warm against my skin. He gently repositioned my grip on the heavy tray. "Bend your elbow. Let the weight rest on your palm and your forearm, not your wrist." His thumb brushed the thin skin on the inside of my wrist. It was a simple correction. It was technical. But where his skin touched mine, a jolt of static electricity, sharp and hot, shot straight up my arm. It was more potent than the champagne. I instinctively tried to pull away, but his grip was firm, steadying the tray. "Better," he murmured. He did not let go. I stared at his hand. "You've done this before." It was not a question. He let go of my hand, but he did not step back. His gaze shifted to the tray, but I could tell he was seeing something else. Somewhere else. My adoptive mother, Elena. She was a dishwasher at the old Rialto, the one they tore down on the waterfront. She worked her way up to pantry prep. She worked nights, double shifts for 24 years. He adjusted his cufflink, a simple, dark stone. She used to come home just before dawn, smelling like bleach and old coffee. Her hands were always chapped, the knuckles split open. She'd sit at the kitchen table and fall asleep before she could even take her shoes off. He looked at me then, his eyes stripped of their usual calculation. She always said the night shift was for ghosts, the invisible people, the ones who work while the city sleeps, just trying to hold on. He paused. "That's the origin of my one absolute rule, Mara. Nobody hunts the ghosts. Nobody touches the night staff." I finally understood. The diner, the money, this... It was not about me. Not really. It was about his mother. It was a code, written in the bleach and exhaustion of a woman I would never know. The orchestra in the main hall began to tune, a chaotic swell of strings and horns that suddenly resolved into a single, piercing violin note. The sound echoed up to the massive glass dome above us. Light from the chandeliers in the main hall spilled through the service doors, catching the stained glass, throwing patterns of sapphire and emerald across the floor. The light caught in my hair. I knew it, because I saw the reflection in his eyes. He just looked at me. The strategist was gone. The boss was gone. It was just a man, looking at a woman in a blue dress. He stared for too long, his expression unreadable, unguarded. It was a dangerous, silent moment. Then he blinked. He straightened his tie, and the mask of command slid back into place. Duval's car just pulled up at the main entrance. He'll be in the VIP lounge in 5 minutes. My heart hammered. I could feel the small, cold metal tag in my apron pocket. "I'm ready. I won't let you down." "Sir." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, gone as fast as it came. "Don't promote me so fast, Mara." He gave a slight nod, and I turned to get the device. I had to palm it, transfer it from my pocket to my hand, all while holding the tray. I shifted the tray's weight to my left hand. I reached into my pocket with my right. The tag was smooth, slippery. My hands were damp. I fumbled it. The tag did not fall, but my hand jerked, and in that split second, my left arm overcompensated. The tray tilted. The 20 champagne flutes began to slide, a quiet, horrifying shying of glass on silver. I did not even have time to gasp. He moved. His speed was inhuman. He did not grab me. He did not make a sound. His left hand shot out, not grabbing the tray, but sliding underneath it, supporting the entire platform from below. His right hand clamped over mine, steadying it, his fingers locking with mine, crushing them against the metal. The glasses stopped. Not one fell. He was holding the tray with me, but to do it, he was pressed against me, his body shielding the near disaster from the rest of the staff. My back was against a stainless steel counter. He was in front, his face inches from mine. I could not breathe. The air was gone. Stolen, his scent flooded my senses. It was not cologne. It was clean cotton, expensive wool, and something sharp and warm underneath, like aged oak and fresh mint. It was overwhelming, intoxicating. "Breathe, Mara," he commanded, his voice a low vibration that I felt in my chest more than I heard with my ears. "Steady. You're a warrior. Warriors do not shake." He held my gaze for one more heartbeat. Then smoothly, he took the tray from me with one hand, setting it on the counter. He never broke eye contact. "Get the tag," he ordered. I pulled the tag from my pocket. My hand was shaking now, badly, when he took it from me, his fingers brushing my palm. He looked at it, then back at me. "The plan is simple. You know your mark. You know your move. 2 seconds, no more." He pressed the tag back into my hand, his fingers closing mine around it. "Now go." I picked up a fresh, smaller tray. This time, my hand was rock steady. I walked into the main hall. It was a sea of noise and perfume. I was invisible again, on a blue dress, a tray. I scanned the VIP section. There he was. Casper Duval. He was exactly as Adrian had described, loud, arrogant, holding a sleek aluminum briefcase as if it were a royal scepter. I moved through the crowd. I got close. I heard him laughing at his own joke. "Now." I faked a stumble, my ankle twisting just slightly. "Oh, goodness, I am so sorry." I breathed, leaning forward. My clean, folded service napkin slipped from my arm and fluttered to the floor, landing directly beside his left foot, right next to the briefcase. "Oh, please allow me," I said, mortified. I bent at the knees, the way Dory had taught me. Keeping my back straight, the move was pure muscle memory, practiced 1,000 times a night picking up dropped forks. My body shielded the briefcase from the room. My left hand went for the napkin. My right hand, the one clutching the tag, shot out. My fingers found the cool metal of the briefcase's underside. I felt the small, rubber wheel. I pressed the tag against the metal casing beside it. There was a faint, satisfying magnetic click. It was done. I stood up, napkin in hand, my face flushed with a fake apology. "So clumsy of me, sir. My apologies." Duval glanced at me, annoyed, and waved me away. Yes, fine. Just watch where you're going." He had not seen a thing. I retreated, my heart pounding a triumphant rhythm. I made it to the service corridor. Adrian was there, watching me, his face impassive. But before I could speak, a woman stepped out of the shadows. She was sharp, dressed in a severe black suit, her dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She held a tablet. She ignored me completely, her eyes locked on Adrian. "We have a problem," she said, her voice low and urgent. This was Ava Morelli, his advisor. "What is it?" Adrian asked. "The data sweep I ran on the building's network. I found a ghost signal, an outbound data packet, masked, routing through a public server." She looked furious. "It is coming from inside our network. Someone in-house is leaking. Adrian, we have a mole." Adrian's face went dark, turning to granite. The air around him went from cool to ice cold. He looked from Ava to me, and for a second I felt a new kind of fear. "Lock it down," he ordered Ava. "Find it." Ava vanished. "The job is done," and he said to me. His tone was clipped, the brief warmth from earlier completely gone. "Let's go." He led me through a side exit, out onto the grand marble steps of the conservatory. The party's noise was muffled behind us. A dull roar. The night had turned, the famous Oregon muzzle descending, a fine, cold mist that was not quite rain but soaked you just as fast. I shivered, the damp air cutting right through the thin silk. Without a word, Adrian shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket. It was heavy, lined with silk, and impossibly warm from his body. He draped it over my shoulders. The scent of him oak, mint, and wool enveloped me, a shield against the cold. I clutched the lapels, pulling it tighter. I looked up to thank him. He was already looking at me. The strategic mind was whirring. I could see it, processing the betrayal Ava had just handed him. But his eyes... As they met mine, were not on the mission. They were on me, huddled in his jacket. The calculation was gone, replaced by something else, something raw, complicated, and utterly human. It was no longer just strategy. The warning from Ava about a mole crackled in the air of the car. It was no longer the quiet, opulent granite sedan. As soon as we left the Orpheum, Remy had guided us to a black SUV, anonymous and powerful, parked in a dark alley. Now, Adrian sat in the passenger seat, his tuxedo jacket still heavy on my shoulders. I was in the back, silent. The cold metal of the locator tag, now retrieved, heavy in my hand. Ava was on the speakerphone, her voice clipped and digital. The tag is active. Duval didn't go home. He's heading south, past the shipyards. Fairfield docks, Adrian said, his voice flat. He was staring straight ahead, but I knew he was seeing a chessboard. He's stopped, Ava reported. Warehouse 12A. He's been inside for 3 minutes. The signal is stationary. The mole warned them, Adrian said. It was not a question. They knew he was tagged. They're waiting for you, Ava confirmed. Then why are we going? I asked, my voice small, the silk of Dory's dress feeling like a paper costume. Adrian finally turned, his dark eyes finding mine in the shadows of the car. Because they've invited us, and they've shown us their hand. You wanted to know what this fight looks like. Mara, this is it. Nah, you're my eyes. You saw how Duval operates. Now you get to see where he operates. He turned to Remy. Kill the lights. Park 3 blocks away. We moved through the Fairfield docks like ghosts. The only sound, the distant creak of tankers and the cry of gulls. The air was thick with salt, rust, and the smell of cold fish. Warehouse 12A was a massive, corrugated steel box, bleeding rust at every seam. Remy picked the lock on the side access door. It clicked open with an oiled, sinister ease. It's unlocked, I whispered, stating the obvious. It's a trap. Of course, Adrian murmured, pulling me close so he did not have to raise his voice. They want us inside. They think we're stupid. We're not. He looked at Remy. Stay with the car. Keep the engine cold. We're on foot from here. Boss, no, Remy argued. Let me go in. I need you on exit. Mara and I are going in. We're quiet. We're invisible. He looked at me, just like the night shift. He took my hand. It was not a romantic gesture. It was a tether. His palm was calloused and warm. We slipped inside. The warehouse was cavernous, a cathedral of cold. The air was frigid, my breath pluming in front of my face. It was filled with dozens of massive white shipping containers, stacked 3 high. It was a maze. The GPS tag was leading us to the center. We moved silently, using the containers for cover. We reached a small clearing in the middle of the stacks. 2 containers sat on the ground, their doors slightly ajar. Adrian released my hand and drew a heavy, tactical flashlight, but did not turn it on. He nodded to the container on the left. I watched our backs while he used a small pry bar to quietly leverage the door open. It swung wide with a low groan. I expected drugs, or guns, or cash. I was wrong. The container was packed, floor to ceiling, with brand new, industrial-grade kitchen equipment, gleaming stainless steel convection ovens, deep fryers still in their plastic wrap, stacked boxes of high-volume ventilation hoods. Skyward kitchens, I breathed. They're mobile. They're not just a front, Adrian said, his voice tight with a terrible discovery. They're an infection. They can shut down one ghost kitchen and pop up a new one in an alley in less than an hour. The entire network is fluid. That was when the sound hit. A deafening clang as the massive roll-up bay door we had not even seen slammed shut, plunging the warehouse into near total darkness. A split second later, the roar of a heavy diesel engine echoed through the steel canyon. A pair of blinding truck headlights ignited, pinning us. Shadows detached themselves from the containers. 1, 2, then 5, then 10. They were kestrel men, dressed in black, holding pipes and bats. They fanned out, blocking every exit, their forms silhouetted against the truck's high beams. They were not here to talk. They were here to finish what they started at the diner. Adrian shoved me behind him, his body a solid shield. I could feel the tension radiating from him. "You're sloppy, Caravello," a voice boomed, echoing strangely. It was the thug from the diner, the one with the concrete face, bringing a waitress to a boss fight. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at my throat. I was going to die here, in a freezing cold box, wearing a borrowed dress. Then I saw it. The Kestrel men were not just holding bats. They were wearing goggles. I saw the faint red glow from the eyepieces. Thermal. My mind raced back to Adrian's lessons. Read the room. Create chaos. And my own words. They're using thermals. The cold, the steam. "The sprinklers," I screamed at Adrian. He looked at me, his eyes wide, understanding dawning. I did not wait. I broke from behind him. "Mara, no!" I ran, not away from them, but parallel, toward the warehouse wall. I saw the red box. I grabbed the small metal hammer chained to it and smashed the glass. A deafening bell-like alarm began to clang, an iron heartbeat in the cavernous space. The Kestrels paused, momentarily confused by the noise. It was not enough. I looked up. The massive black pipes of the fire suppression system ran overhead. I grabbed a loose piece of rebar from a stack of construction debris. "Cover me," I yelled. Adrian moved, drawing their fire. He grabbed a heavy chain and swung it, a terrifying arc of black metal that kept the first wave of thugs at bay. I jammed the rebar into the joint of the nearest sprinkler pipe and pulled, using all my weight. The pipe groaned. I threw my body against it. A sharp snap and then a hiss. A torrent of pressurized, frigid water erupted from the ceiling. It was not a spray, it was a deluge. The Kestrel leader laughed. "You think a little water..." But it was not just water. It was a cold storage facility. The moment the freezing water hit the hot engine of the truck and the ambient, warmer air, the entire warehouse exploded in steam, a thick white, blinding fog filled the space in seconds. The men yelled, their thermal goggles instantly whited out, rendered useless. They were blind. "The side door now." Adrian grabbed my arm, his grip like a steel vise. We plunged into the fog. We could hear the men shouting, confused, swinging their pipes at ghosts. We found the side door. Adrian kicked it, but it held. He kicked it again. The frame splintered. We burst out into the alley. Remy was there, the SUV's engine roaring to life. "Get in," he yelled. We piled in, Adrian shoving me into the back, climbing into the passenger seat as Remy took the wheel. A Kestrel thug burst from the fog, smashing the driver's side window with a tire iron. Glass exploded inward. Remy grunted, a sharp intake of pain as the metal bar struck his shoulder. He slammed the SUV into drive, but the truck from the warehouse burst through the roll-up door, blocking the alley. We were pinned. "Out!" Adrian yelled, already halfway out the passenger door. "The sedan go!" Remy had a backup. We ran, cutting through a narrow passage between two buildings. The sedan was there, 2 blocks down. We dove in. Remy clutched his shoulder, his face pale. "Arms broken, boss, I can't..." "Mara," Adrian ordered, climbing into the passenger seat. He did not look at me. He looked at the Kestrel truck rounding the corner, its headlights racing toward us. "Drive." My mind went blank. "What I can't..." "Drive," he roared. My hands, slick with cold sweat, fumbled for the keys already in the ignition. I turned. The engine caught. I slammed the gear shift, not even looking, feeling it slot into drive. The Kestrel's truck was 50 yards away. I stomped on the gas pedal. The sedan leaped forward, tires smoking. I was driving on pure adrenaline, my knuckles white. We hit the first corner, the entrance to the harbor bridge. I took it too fast. The world compressed to a tunnel. I saw the low concrete guardrail looming, gleaming in the darkness. I cranked the wheel. A deafening screech of metal on stone. Sparks erupted, a waterfall of fire in my side view mirror. The car shuddered violently, but the tires caught. I straightened the wheel. I was breathing in short, painful gasps. I had done it. I had saved us. I kept driving, fast. my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. Beside me, Adrian took a deep, steadying breath. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. It rang once. He hit the speaker button. A gravelly, surprised voice answered, "Yeah." "Damien," Adrian said. His voice was calm. It was the coldest sound I had ever heard. "Caravello, how—" "You missed," Adrian said. "You had a mole. You had thermal optics. You had a 10-on-2 advantage. And you missed." "We'll get her," Damien Ward snarled. "We'll get that little girl of hers." "No," Adrian's voice cut him off, sharp and absolute. "You won't. You put your hands on my staff. You brought my world to her doorstep. When you touch my people. Damien, that's not a threat. That's a roll call. And I'm checking you off the list." He hung up the phone. He did not slam it. He just pressed the end button. The silence in the car was heavier than the darkness outside. I drove, following his quiet directions, my body shaking so hard my teeth chattered. We entered a quiet residential neighborhood. "Pull over here." I put the car in park and gripped the wheel, unable to let go. The adrenaline was draining, leaving a hollow, terrifying void. "Lila," I whispered. I could not breathe. "I have to know." "I know." He was already holding his phone out to me. "Dory sent this an hour ago. She does not know about this. It was just an update." It was a voicemail. I pressed the icon. The sound that filled the car was not a voice. It was splashing. And then, high and clear as a bell, I heard it. Lila's laugh, a pure, shrieking, uncontrollable giggle, the sound of a happy, safe child taking a bath. The tears I refused to shed in the diner, the tears I choked back at the Orpheum, the tears I held back in the warehouse, they came now. A hot, silent flood. This was my anchor. This was the reason I was still breathing. I wiped my face, the fear hardening into something else, something cold and hard. Resolve. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice raw. "Glasslight Point," he said, taking the phone back. "A safe house." We got out. Remy was already being helped by another man who had emerged from the building. We went inside. It was not an apartment, it was a command center. Banks of monitors glowed in the dark. Ava Morelli was there, her face a mask of fury. But my eyes were drawn to the far wall. It was covered by a massive, backlit map of Mariner City. It was alive with red pins, dozens of them, connected by strands of red yarn, the Juneberry Grill, Dockside Courts, the Orpheum Fairfield docks. They were all there, nodes in a terrifying web that covered my entire world. "This is the war," Adrian said, standing beside me. His sleeve was dark where he had helped Remy. "You're not on the sidelines anymore. Mara?" The map glowed, the red pins like drops of blood. The fight was not over. It had just begun. Ava Morelli left to manage the hunt for the mole, her anger a cold, controlled fury. Remy, his arm bound in a sling and his face pale, had been taken by another Vermilion operative to a private doctor. The safe house, which had briefly hummed with tense activity, fell suddenly silent. It was just us, Adrian and me. The adrenaline from the warehouse, from the chase, from the screech of metal on concrete, drained away all at once. It left a vacuum, and the cold rushed in to fill it. I was still wearing Dory's beautiful midnight blue dress, now damp from the rain-soaked alley and smeared with grime. His tuxedo jacket was still draped over my shoulders, heavy with his scent, but even that could not stop the shiver. It was a deep, bone-rattling cold, a tremor that started in my knees and worked its way up my spine until my teeth chattered. The safe house at Glasslight Point was all hard angles, glass and steel. It perched on a cliff overlooking the marina, a fortress disguised as modern architecture. The rain, driven by the sea wind, hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, a relentless, angry drumming. The lights in the main room flickered, once, twice. Then they buzzed and stabilized at half strength, casting the room in a sickly, dim glow, the massive, backlit map of Mariner City on the far wall, however, stayed bright, its red pins glowing like angry embers. Adrian was standing in front of it, his back to me. He had taken off his ruined, water-stained shirt and was wearing a simple, dry black t-shirt that stretched taut across his shoulders. He was a man coiled, studying the map, his mind clearly 3 steps ahead, already planning his war. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to get warm, trying to stop shaking. I failed. He heard the soft chatter of my teeth. He turned, and the strategist vanished. His focus snapped to me, sharp and immediate. "You're freezing." He moved to a recessed cabinet, pulled out a thick, heavy woolen blanket, the kind meant for surviving Oregon winters. He did not toss it to me. He walked over and unfolded it, his movements economical and precise. He draped it around my shoulders, over his own jacket. The wool was soft, smelling faintly of cedar. His hands rested on my shoulders for a second, his grip firm, grounding, the warmth from his palms soaked through the layers of wool, silk and linen, sinking into my skin. It was the first real, uncomplicated warmth I had felt all night. Then, his duty done. He stepped back, his expression shuddering, turning professional again. "There's a guest room down the hall. You should get some sleep. You're safe here." He turned to leave. "Don't." The word was out before I could stop it, small and raw in the quiet room. He stopped, his back still to me. "Don't leave me alone," I said, my voice stronger this time, though it trembled. "Not right now." He turned around, slowly. He studied my face, his dark eyes searching for something. I must have looked pathetic, a half-drowned waitress clutching a blanket, but I did not feel pathetic. I felt anchored. I had driven that car. I had smashed that sprinkler pipe. I was not the same woman who was crying on the diner floor. He walked back to me, and he did not speak. He stopped just in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. The rain lashed the glass, a chaotic rhythm against the pounding in my chest. He raised a hand, not to my shoulder, but to my face. His thumb gently brushed the damp hair from my temple. His fingers were calloused, rough from a life I could not imagine, but his touch was unbelievably gentle. I did not flinch. I did not pull away. I leaned into it, a small, involuntary movement, closing my eyes. His hand slid to the back of my neck, his fingers threading into my hair, holding me steady. His other hand rested on my waist. He drew me closer until his forehead rested against mine. I could feel his breath, warm and even, ghosting across my lips. We stood like that in the center of the dark room, anchored to each other while the storm raged outside. His scent was all around me, oak and mint and the clean, sharp smell of the sea air. "Mara," he whispered, his voice rough. "Are you sure?" I opened my eyes. He was not a boss. He was not a gangster. He was just a man. His own loneliness a tangible thing in his dark eyes. He was not asking for permission. He was warning me. I did not trust him, not completely, but I recognized him. He was a ghost, just like me. "Yes," I breathed. He did not crush his lips to mine. It was not a collision. It was a surrender. The first kiss was slow, hesitant, a question. His lips were firm, warm. It was a promise of stability. I responded, my hands coming up, not to push him away, but to hold on. My fingers found the solid plane of his chest, curling into his t-shirt. I felt the powerful, steady beat of his heart under my palm. His hand on my waist tightened, pulling me flush against him. The other hand held my head, tilting it, deepening the kiss. It was no longer a question. It was an answer. It was deep and slow, and it tasted of the adrenaline we had shared, of the salt spray, and of a hunger that had nothing to do with food. I was not just a waitress. He was not just a mob boss. We were two survivors, mapping each other's territory in the dark. He broke the kiss, but only to move, his lips tracing a line of fire along my jaw, to the sensitive skin just below my ear. I gasped, my head falling back. We moved, a clumsy, tangled dance, sinking down onto the long, leather sofa that faced the windows, the storm, and the city. His jacket fell away, the woolen blanket pooled around us. Layers of defense, shed one by one. He was heavy and solid above me, a welcome weight. He kissed me again, and this time there was no hesitation. It was a claiming. "You are not invisible," he murmured against my mouth, as if he had heard the deepest, most secret fear of my heart. His hand, the one that had held mine on the tray, that had steadied me, now slid down my side, over the silk, learning the curve of my hip, the line of my thigh. His touch was electric, burning away the cold. "I'm not," I whispered back, my voice ragged. His hand moved to the small of my back, fingers splayed, pressing me closer. I arched into him, a silent, desperate yes. The sound of the rain against the glass intensified, a driving, rhythmic percussion that matched the pounding of my blood. The dim lights flickered, casting the room in strobing flashes of shadow and silver. I saw the hard line of his jaw, the pulse beating in his throat, the intensity in his eyes. It was not a taking, it was a discovery. Every touch was a statement. I see you. I feel you. You are real. He was methodical, his control absolute, yet his hands were shaking, just slightly. It was in that small tremor that I found my own power. A shudder ran through me, a deep, rising tide that matched the storm. I cried out, a sound that was lost in a crash of thunder. It was a release, a breaking, a reforming. After, the silence in the room was profound. The only sound was the steady drum of the rain. No longer angry, just constant. We lay on the couch, tangled together, the heavy wool blanket draped over us both. His arm was a heavy, warm bar across my waist. My head was tucked under his chin, my cheek resting against the solid warmth of his chest. I heard a sound, a low rumble. It took me a second to realize what it was. He was laughing, a quiet, breathless sound of pure disbelief. A second later, I joined him. It was absurd. It was insane. It was the most alive I had ever felt. His hand found mine under the blanket, his fingers lacing with mine, a seamless, solid grip. He was quiet for a long time. I could feel the steady rise and fall of his chest. "No one," he said, his voice a low, rough vow, spoken into my hair. "No one will ever touch you. No one will ever touch your daughter. I promise you that, Mara." He did not swear on his life. He did not swear on his honor. It was a simple, flat statement of fact, a new law of nature he had just written. I squeezed his hand. I believed him. As if summoned by his promise, the power in the safe house surged. BZZT. The lights did not just come back on, they snapped to full, blinding brightness. The dim, intimate shadows were instantly erased, exposing the room in harsh, clinical detail. And on the far wall, the map of Mariner City, which had been our silent witness, lit up like a Christmas tree, its red pins blinking, bright and urgent. The war was still waiting. We both looked at it, our hands still clasped. We had not won. We had just finally, truly chosen a side. The intimacy of the night before evaporated in the harsh, tactical light of the safe house. I had woken up on the couch, the woolen blanket still wrapped around me, to the smell of strong, black coffee. Adrian was already dressed, not in a suit, but in the dark. Functional trousers and t-shirt he had worn before. He was on the phone, his back to me, his voice a low, lethal hum as he spoke to Ava. "Verify Remy's location, and I want eyes on the daycare. Now," he commanded. He hung up and saw I was awake. The softness from the night, the brief, shared laughter, was gone. His eyes were hard. "I'm moving you and Lila to a different location. This one is compromised." Compromised. Before he could answer, my phone buzzed on the counter where it had been charging. It was not a number I recognized. "Don't touch it," he said, his voice sharp. He crossed the room in 3 strides, picked up the phone, and looked at the screen. A text message. His entire body went rigid. "What?" I asked, sitting up, the blanket pooling in my lap. "What is it?" He did not speak. He just turned the phone and showed me the screen. My heart stopped. The air punched out of my lungs. It was a photograph of Lila. She was standing at the chain-link fence of her daycare playground, the one near Dockside Courts. She was holding a red rubber ball, squinting in the morning sun. It was a clear shot, taken with a long lens camera, from across the street. She was looking right at whoever took it. The timestamp was 9:15 a.m. It was 9:21. Below the photo, a single line of text. She looks just like her dad, easy to find. A scream, thin and raw, tore from my throat. I lunged for the phone, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold it. No, no, no. Adrian was already moving, his hand on my shoulder, steadying me, but I was beyond his touch. They're there. They're there. "Ava," he yelled into the intercom. "Lockdown, packages threatened. I want immediate extraction." Ava burst into the room, her face pale, tablet in hand. "I just got the alert. An unknown device breached the daycare's Wi-Fi. They're not just outside. Adrian, they're inside the network." "Who?" he demanded. "The mole," Ava said, her voice tight with fury. "The data packets are routing through the same ghost server as the leak from the Orpheum." She was typing, her fingers flying. "I've been tracing the source. The authorization codes. It's... Oh, no." "Who?" "Ava." "The access key," she said, finally looking up at him, her face grim. "The one used for the breach. It was issued by Vermilion Security." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a cold pity. "It was assigned to Remy." The room tilted. Remy. The man who had driven us. The man with the broken arm. The man who had handed me the metal card and said, "We happen." "That's impossible, Mo," I whispered. "He was with us. He was hurt." "He's loyal," Adrian said, his voice a low growl. But I could see the doubt, the calculation. "He's also the perfect cutout," Ava countered. "He's at the Union Clinic on Alder, or he's supposed to be." She paused, her eyes widening. "He's not... He checked out 20 minutes ago. His phone is dark. Boss, Remy's gone." Adrian did not hesitate. He was a creature of pure, forward motion. "We find him. We find him. We find the Kestrels." He looked at me, his eyes now devoid of all emotion. "Stay here. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me." "Like hell," I said, pulling on my sneakers. Dory's dress was gone, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt the safe house kept stocked. "They're using my daughter. I'm not sitting here." He stared at me for a long second, then gave a sharp nod. "Stay in the car." Ava tracked the last ping from the car Remy had been assigned after the clinic. "He's not smart," she muttered. "He left the transponder on." The signal led us to the Ravenhill district, a graveyard of dead factories and collapsed warehouses. "He stopped here," Ava said, pointing to a derelict building, "an old printing press." Adrian, Ava, and 2 other Vermilion operatives fanned out, moving with a silent, terrifying efficiency. I stayed in the idling SUV, my knuckles white, my gaze locked on that photograph. I could not do it. I could not just wait. I got out of the car. I followed them, slipping through a gap in the chain-link fence. The printing press smelled of old ink, rust, and damp plaster. It was a skeleton of a building. In the center of the vast, empty floor, a single folding table had been set up. On it, a laptop, a burner phone, and a single manila folder. Adrian picked up the folder. He opened it. His face was unreadable. "What is it?" I asked, stepping out from behind a rusted metal pillar. He did not look surprised to see me. He just handed me the folder. It was not Kestrel data. It was not a map. It was a life insurance policy, issued by Sun Hollow Financial, the same company that owned my apartment. I read the name on the policy, insured Rhett Cade, beneficiary Mara Linden. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth. He's dead," I whispered. "I thought he was dead." "No," A voice echoed from the steel rafters above us. "Just gone. There's a difference." A man dropped down from a metal catwalk, landing softly on the concrete floor. He was thinner than I remembered, his smile weaker. But it was him. The man who had left me with $22,000 in debt and a 6-month-old baby. "Hello, Mara," Rhett Cade said. Adrian stepped between us, a solid, protective wall. "Rhett." "This isn't your business. Caravello," Rhett said, trying to sound brave, his eyes darting to the vermilion men who were now flanking him. "This is between me and my wife." "I'm not your wife," I spat. Pushing past Adrian, the anger was so pure, so hot, it burned every last trace of fear out of my system. "You ran. You left us. You left her." "I did it for you," he yelled, his voice cracking. "I had to the Kestrels. They were going to kill me. I made a deal. I had to pay off the marker." "What deal?" Adrian's voice was like ice. I'm good with data," Rhett stammered. "I gave them information. That's all. I've been their data guy. They clear my debt. I feed them intel. I was going to come back. For you, for Lila." "You?" I whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "You were the mole, not Remy. You gave them the picture." "No," he said, horrified. "I would never." "I told them about her. Yes, I told them where she went to school, how to find you, but I didn't take the picture. They needed leverage. They need you. Mara, they need you to get closer to Caravello. They need to know what he knows about Skyward Kitchens." "What else?" "Rhett," Ava asked, her voice dangerously quiet. She'd been working on her tablet. "What else did you give them access to?" Rhett would not meet my eyes. Ava looked at me, and her expression was the coldest I had ever seen. "Mara, when you applied for aid from the Urban Welfare Trust." "What about it?" "The trust. It's a Kestrel front. Rhett confirmed it. When you filled out that application, you gave them everything, every medical file, every financial statement, every social worker's report on your suitability as a mother." The floor dropped out from under me. "They're not just going to threaten her, Mara," Ava said, her voice gentle. "They're going to take her. Legally, they're building a case, an anonymous tip to CPS. They'll claim you're unstable, living in poverty, and associating with known organized crime figures." She gestured to Adrian. "They'll use your connection to us to prove you're an unfit mother. It's a legal trap." "We move her," Adrian said instantly, his voice a blade. "Now, we pull her out. We send her north to my family's estate. She'll be safe." A blind, hot rage surged through me. I turned on him. "No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to make that decision. You promised me no one would touch her." And he, I pointed a shaking finger at Rhett, "walked right past you. You promised, and she's still a pawn." I was shaking, not with fear, but with fury. I felt sidelined, pushed to the edge of my own daughter's life, a piece in his game. "Mara, this is not a discussion," Adrian said, his voice hard. "This is strategy. They made a threat. We counter. She is not a chess piece." "She is to them," he roared, his own control snapping for the first time. He grabbed my shoulders, his grip bruising. "They will use your love for her to destroy you and to destroy me. I will not let that happen." His eyes bored into mine. "You have to trust me." I stared at him, my anger warring with the cold, absolute terror. He was right. My anger was a luxury. Her safety was not. "Okay," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "Okay, move her, but I go with her." "No," Ava said, stepping forward. "That's what they'll expect. You need to be seen here. You need to be the bait. You need to look scared and desperate." "The plan is this," Adrian said, his voice clipped and fast. "We make a decoy, a loud one. Ava, get the convoy. The black SUV, 2 escort cars, Mrs. Petrov, her sitter. We'll take a decoy, one of the union kids, bundled up in Lila's blanket. They'll take the I-5 north, past the bridge. They'll be seen." My blood ran cold. "Kestrel will intercept them." "Exactly," Adrian said. And while they're hitting the decoy, Dory is already at the daycare. She's picking Lila up from the back service entrance. Right now, Lila will be safe at a different safe house before Kestrel even knows what's happened. But we have to sell it. Your panic has to be real. It all happened in a blur. We were back at Dockside Courts. I watched from my own apartment window, my stomach twisting into a single, painful knot. The black SUV idled below. I saw Mrs. Petrov, a brave, terrified older woman, run from the lobby. She was holding a small child wrapped in Lila's bright pink unicorn blanket. She jumped in the SUV. The convoy sped off. I waited. Adrian and Ava stood with me, the room silent. 10 minutes later, Ava's earpiece chirped. "They took it," she said, her voice tight. 3 Kestrel cars just boxed in the convoy on the Fremont Bridge. They've blocked traffic. They're surrounding the SUV. I held my breath. I could not breathe. "They're pulling Mrs. Petrov out," Ava narrated. "They've grabbed the child. They're unwrapping the blanket." A pause. "They see the decoy. They're furious. They're retreating. Our team is safe." I sagged against the wall, the relief so profound it made me sick. Adrian's personal phone buzzed. A text. He turned the screen to me. It was a new picture. From Dory. It was Lila, fast asleep in the back seat of Dory's old station wagon, her face peaceful, her stuffed seagull tucked under her arm. The text read, "Captain's precious cargo is secure." I stared at the picture, and then at Adrian, the anger, the fear. It all settled into a cold, clear understanding. "You had to be angry," he said softly, reading my expression. "You had to believe the decoy was real. They're watching you. Mara, your fear had to be genuine for them to take the bait. He had used me. He had used my terror as a strategic tool. But he had used it to keep her safe. He had lied to me by not telling me the full plan, because the truth would have made me a bad actress." I looked at the man who had turned my life inside out. Trust in his world was not a blind leap. It was a calculated risk. It was a contingency plan. It was knowing, finally, that when the choice came, he would make the one that kept the monsters at bay. And I had chosen to trust him. The fragile peace I had bought with Lila's safety was a cold, sharp thing. It did not last. The safe house at Glasslight Point was not a home. It was a war room, and the war was accelerating. Ava, her face illuminated by the glow of 3 monitors, had finally cracked the data from the Orpheum network. Cross-referencing it with the intel Rhett had provided. "I've got it," she said, her voice tight, cutting through the early morning silence. Adrian and I moved to stand behind her. She brought up a new screen. It was not a map of the city. It was a complex, flowing diagram of data packets, a digital river. "This is the Skyward Kitchens network," she said. "Rhett was right. They're using the Urban Welfare Trust servers to mask their traffic, but the GPS tag on Duval's briefcase gave me the key." She highlighted a single, recurring temporal signature, a timestamp that appeared thousands of times. 8 p.m., I whispered, my blood running cold. The diner, the moment my life had cracked open. 8 p.m. sharp, Adrian confirmed, his voice a low growl. He was closing the diner, but not just to threaten you. He was clearing the decks. It's their witching hour. "It's a digital lights out," Ava explained, her fingers flying across the keyboard, pulling up financial models. "Every night at exactly 8 o'clock for 15 minutes, their entire ghost kitchen network stops processing legitimate food orders. They switch the app to high demand, no drivers available. But the system is not idle. It's washing." "A 15-minute window," Adrian said, pacing. "They dump all the Kestrel cash from the day loan sharking, protection rackets, everything into the system as thousands of fake, high-value food orders. The app processes it, takes its 30% fee, and spits the rest out as clean revenue to 100 different holding companies. It's a massive, city-wide rinse cycle," Ava said grimly. "And it happens tomorrow night. It's the end of the month, the biggest one of the quarter. They're expecting to wash over $10 million. "So we hit the kitchens," I said, thinking of the container in the warehouse. "No," Adrian said, stopping his pacing. He turned to the massive map of Mariner City, the one with the glowing red pins. We can't hit all of them. The network is fluid. We take out one. They pop up another in an alley. We don't hit the kitchens. He tapped the glowing screen, his expression hardening. We hit the network. We steal their 8 p.m. Ava looked up, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. You're going to create a bottleneck. We're going to starve them, he corrected. Their system is built to wash 10 million in 15 minutes. What happens if the money just is not there? What happens if the Kestrel runners show up at the drop points, the back doors of diners, bars, and failing pizzerias, and the doors are locked? He looked at me, and his eyes were electric. Tomorrow night, every restaurant, diner, and bar loyal to the Mariner Union, and there are hundreds, will close at 8 p.m. On the dot, not 8:01. 8. They will turn off their stoves, lock their doors, and refuse the cash drop. Kestrel's men will be left holding millions in dirty cash with nowhere to put it. I realized the scale of it dawning on me. The system will stall. A system stall with that much volume creates a data crash, Adrian finished. It'll freeze their ledgers, expose their back-end servers, and leave a digital trail a mile wide. We don't just stop the wash, we burn the entire laundry. But how? I asked. How do you convince hundreds of independent business owners to close on a Friday night? That's their busiest night. That's thousands of dollars in lost revenue. And the owners are easy, Adrian said, waving a hand. They owe the union. I'll make the calls. That's the top down. But the Kestrels will push back. They'll threaten. They'll bully. The owners will hold. But the system, the real system, relies on the staff. He turned to me, and I knew this was my assignment. The system relies on the night shift, the dishwashers who unlock the back door for the runner, the line cooks who sign the fake invoice, the delivery drivers who move the bags, the servers who are paid $50 to look the other way and keep their mouths shut. The ghosts, I said, the word tasting like bleach and old coffee. The ghosts, he confirmed. I'm a boss. They'll never trust me. They'll take my money and flip if Kestrel offers more. But you're one of them. You're the waitress, they threatened. You're the one who scrubbed the floors. They have not been asked to join a fight. They've just been told what to do. You want me to convince them, I said. I want you to lead them, he countered. Dory has already started. She's setting up the meetings. You have 24 hours. Mara, 24 hours to convince the entire night shift of Mariner City to go on strike for 15 minutes, for themselves. While you, I said, looking at Ava, do what? While we cut the head off the snake, Ava said. She dragged an image onto the main screen. It was a massive, sprawling complex of train tracks and dark warehouses, silhouetted against the river. The Atlas Rail Yards, it's the central data hub for the entire Pacific Northwest Freight Line. Skyward Kitchens leases a secure server room there. According to Rhett's data, it's their packet splitter. It's the brain. It's where the fake orders are generated and the laundered money is routed. That's where we'll be, Adrian said, looking at me. While you have the city on lockdown, we'll be inside that room. You starve the body, we take the head. This was it, the endgame. I had been pulled in by force, but I was staying by choice. Okay, I said, my voice steady. I'll do it. I'll talk to them. But I have one more condition. Ava paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. Adrian looked at me, his gaze unblinking, respectful. When this is over, when we win. I took a deep breath. The Sun Hollow Foundation, I want my debt and the debt of everyone in that building, wiped, a clean slate, for everyone. Done, Adrian said without hesitation. And, I said, the words tasting strange and wonderful on my tongue. I'm done working for other people. I'm done with the Juneberry. I know how to cook. I want my own place. A real kitchen. I pointed to a spot on the map, a quiet corner near the water. I want the corner spot on Bay and Alder, the one that's been boarded up for 2 years. You help me get the lease. You help me get the permits. You help me build it. A long silence filled the room. Ava looked at me, a flicker of stunned admiration in her eyes. Adrian did not smile, but the intensity in his gaze softened. He was not looking at a waitress. He was looking at an equal. He did not offer a handshake. He did not sign a contract. He placed his right hand, flat, over his heart. "By my law," he said, his voice a low, binding oath, "it's yours." The next 24 hours were a blur. I wasn't Mara Linden, the single mom. I was a general. Dory and I moved through the city's underbelly, not the criminal one, but the working one. We met in steamy dish pits, in cold back alleys, in the break rooms of chain hotels. I did not give speeches. I just told them the truth. I told them about the Kestrels. I told them about Skyward. I told them about the 8 p.m. window. They call us ghosts. I said to a group of 5 tired servers huddled by a dumpster, because they think we're invisible. They think we don't talk to each other. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m., we're going to prove them wrong. For 15 minutes, we're going to haunt them. They did not ask for money. They just nodded. They were in... That night, my last night before the fight, Dory brought me a burner phone. "She's safe," Dory said, her eyes soft, "and she wants to say goodnight." I stepped out onto the safe house balcony, the cold sea air biting at my face. I hit the button. It was a FaceTime call. Lila's face filled the screen, pixelated and perfect. She was in a room I did not recognize, a cozy-looking bedroom with a wooden ceiling. "Mommy, Captain," she squealed, her voice bright. "Hey, baby," I whispered, my throat tightening, aching. "Dory made pasta and I have a new friend. He's a dog. He's giant and look." She held up a piece of paper to the camera. It was one of her crayon drawings. It was not seagulls this time. It was me, a stick figure. But she had given me a blue dress, and I was standing on the bow of a big ship, my hand on the wheel. "It's you, Mommy," she said. "You're the captain. You're steering the boat." My eyes burned. The tears came, hot and fast, but this was different. This was not the hot, silent tear of helplessness on the diner floor. This was not the cold tear of terror when I saw her picture. This was a tear of choice, a tear of power. I was steering the boat, straight into the storm. "I love it, Lila," I said, my voice thick. "It's perfect. You be good. I'll see you very, very soon." "I love you, Captain," she said, and blew a loud, wet kiss at the screen. The call ended. I wiped my face. I was ready. We stood in the staging area, a dark, abandoned garage 2 blocks from the Atlas rail yards. It was tomorrow. It was now. The air was cold and electric with anticipation. "The city is set," Ava reported, her voice coming through our earpieces. "The kitchen staff are in position. They're calling it the night shift shutdown." Adrian was in black tactical gear, as was I. He handed me a simple, 2-way radio. "This is your link to Ava, but this." He pressed a small, red plastic card into my hand. "Is your voice." "What is it?" "It's the master key card for the Atlas Yards PA system, the entire complex, the loading docks, the control towers, the worker break rooms." "Why am I carrying this?" I asked. "You're the one going in." "We go in together," Ani said. "But if things go sideways, if we get separated, if this whole thing falls apart, they're not just relying on me, they're relying on you, the ghosts. You're the one they'll listen to. If the fight turns, you get to that console. You swipe this card and you speak." I looked at the card. It was a failsafe. It was a weapon. It was his trust, made plastic. I slid it into the tactical vest he had given me. Ava's voice crackled in our ears. "All teams in position. We are green to go." Adrian looked at me, his face in shadow, his eyes reflecting the dim light of the street. "Ready, Captain." I checked my watch. The digital numbers glowed green, 7:59 p.m. Across the whole of Mariner City, hundreds of hands were reaching for light switches. Hundreds of dishwashers were drying their hands. Hundreds of line cooks were turning off their gas. The city held its breath. "Ready," I said, 8 p.m. The second hand on the digital clock in the safe house clicked to 12. On Ava's main monitor, a live map of Mariner City's commercial grid. Something impossible happened. It went dark. Not all at once, but in a rolling, systematic blackout. The open signals from hundreds of restaurants, bars, and diners blinked from green to red, from the waterfront to the downtown core, from the industrial park to the suburbs. The city's night shift turned off the lights. The Juneberry Grill, the Mariner Tavern, Sal's Pizza, all of them. Ava's other screen, the one tracking the Skyward Kitchens network, turned to chaos. The flow of data, that steady digital river, became a trickle. Red warning icons flashed. Insufficient nodes. The Kestrel map, which should have been lighting up with cash drop confirmations, was a dead, black void. "It's working, Mara," Ava's voice crackled, impossibly calm, in my earpiece. "The system is choking. They're jammed." The money was stuck on the streets. At that exact moment, Adrian and I were pressed against the cold, corrugated steel of the main dispatch building at the Atlas rail yards. The air smelled of diesel and ozone. Far off, a long, mournful train whistle cut through the night, a lonely sound that echoed the pounding in my chest. Adrian sliced the lock on the maintenance hatch. We slipped inside, into a humming corridor lit by the dim, green glow of emergency lighting. This was the brain. We moved fast, following Ava's directions. Second floor, control room at the end of the hall. Adrian took the lead, moving with a fluid, lethal grace. He kicked open the door. The room was not empty. It was brightly lit, buzzing with the sound of high-capacity servers. And they were waiting for us. Casper Duval was there, leaning against a server rack, his expensive suit unbuttoned. He was smoking one of his mint-scented cigarettes. Beside him, looking pale and terrified, was Rhett, and in the center of the room, his arms crossed, his face a mask of smug victory, was Damian Ward, the Kestrel leader. "Right on time, Caravello," Ward sneered. "We've been expecting you." "Rhett," I whispered. The betrayal was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. "He's a good data analyst. Your husband," Duval said, blowing a cloud of smoke. "He figured out your little shutdown plan. Very clever, all those restaurant owners. But you forgot one thing." Ward gestured to a massive black machine in the corner, humming loudly. "You can't starve a system that has a backup generator. While your ghosts are sitting in the dark, we're right here, pushing all 10 million through the freight network's main server. We're not just washing money tonight. Mara, we're washing it through the railroad." They were going to win. They had known. They had used us. Adrian's hand went inside his jacket, but Ward just laughed, holding up a small, silver dead man switch. "Guns in a server room, bad idea. One stray bullet hits these data splitters, and the whole rail yard goes dark. Besides, we have our own failsafe." He was right. We were trapped. I looked past them at the control console. It was a wide desk, facing a massive window that overlooked the entire sprawling rail yard. I saw the workers below, hundreds of them milling around in the harsh floodlights, loading containers, driving trucks, completely unaware of the crime happening right above their heads. And I saw the PA system microphone. "They think we're invisible," I told the servers. "Let's haunt them." While Adrian engaged Ward, his voice low and dangerous, buying time, I backed away, step by step, toward the console. Rhett watched me, his eyes pleading. Duval ignored me, focused on Adrian. I reached the desk. My hand closed over the red plastic card Adrian had given me. I slid it through the console slot. A small, green light blinked "System active." I hit the switch. A loud thunk echoed across the entire rail yard, a sound of amplification. Damian Ward spun around. "What the hell?" I grabbed the microphone, my knuckles white. I looked out the window, at the hundreds of tiny figures below. I took a deep breath. "This is not a drill," I said. My voice, magnified 1,000 times, boomed across the yards, echoing off the steel containers. "This is a message for every driver, every loader, and every signalman working the night shift." The workers below stopped, They looked up, confused. "My name is Mara Linden," I said, my voice shaking but clear. "And for 3 years, I've been just like you. I'm the one who serves you coffee at dawn. I'm the one who scrubs the floors after you leave." In the control room, Ward was screaming, "Turn it off! Duval, turn it off!" "Those men," I continued, pointing down from the window, my voice rising. "The men in the expensive suits in the control tower above you are Skyward Kitchens, and they're using you." Duval fumbled with the console, but the keycard had locked the system. He could not override it. "You think you're loading freight," I said. "You're not. You're loading dirty money. Right now, at 8 p.m., they are routing millions of dollars from loan sharking money they beat out of people like us through your servers. They're using your sweat and your rail lines to wash their cash. They're using your work to get rich, while they pay you just enough to keep you quiet." Down below, the sea of indifference was changing. The confused looks were turning hard. They were turning angry. They were looking at each other. They were looking at the control tower. "They are stealing from you," I yelled, "and they are doing it right on your turf." "Shut her up," Ward roared, and he lunged. Not at me, at Adrian. But Rhett, his face a mask of terror, moved first. He saw Ward coming. "No!" he screamed, and he tried to grab me, to pull me away, to use me as a shield. "Mara!" Adrian shouted. He moved to block Rhett, but Ward was faster. He pulled a knife, a long, thin blade, and lunged. Adrian twisted, shoving me clear, the blade's sharp hiss as it cut through the air. Adrian grunted, a sharp, choked sound. The knife sliced deep into his forearm. Blood, dark and hot, spilled down his arm, dripping onto the clean floor. Seeing his blood, something in me snapped. The fear was gone, burned away by a white-hot rage. Rhett was still grabbing at me. Damian Ward was raising the knife for another strike. I was not a waitress. I was a warrior. I spun, my body moving on instinct, and drove my foot, heel first, into the main power switch of the backup server, the one they were so proud of. There was a massive crack of electricity. A shower of brilliant, blue-white sparks exploded from the console. The humming of the machine died with a pathetic whine. The room was plunged into partial darkness, lit only by the red emergency lights. "The data!" Duval screamed. "The money is trapped!" At that exact second, the door burst open. It was not Kestrel, it was Ava. Followed by 6 Vermilion operatives. They were not in suits. They were in black tactical gear, just like us. They carried no guns. They held long, black stun batons that crackled with blue energy, and zip ties. Fast and clean, Ava commanded, "No one dies." Her team moved like a disciplined, silent wave. They were not thugs. They were soldiers. They disabled Rhett first, a quick, precise strike that folded him to the ground. 2 more engaged Ward's own men, who had been standing guard, the sound of the batons, the grunts. It was all over in seconds, principled. Damian Ward saw it was over. He snarled. He was not going down with his ship. He was going to sink it. He lunged for the wall, for a large, red emergency lever. Manual data flush. He was going to wipe the servers, destroy the evidence. "No!" I yelled. I saw the thick, bundled power cable running from the ceiling to the data flush console. There was a fire axe in a red case on the wall. In case of emergency. This was an emergency. I smashed the glass, grabbed the axe. It was heavy, solid. Ward's hand closed on the lever. I swung. I did not aim for him. I aimed for the cable. I put all my weight, all my rage, all my fear for Lila into that one. Single swing. The axe bit deep. Copper and rubber and steel parted. With a final, explosive pop, every light in the control room died. The servers, the emergency lights, the PA system, everything. Total blackness. The only sound was the sudden, shocking silence, the distant, steady drum of the rain on the metal roof, the harsh, ragged breathing of 6 people in a dark room, the drip, drip, drip of Adrian's blood hitting the floor. Casper, Ward whispered, his voice a panicked hiss in the dark. Duval, where are you? Silence. I heard it, a faint scraping, a footstep, a click, the sound of a designer lighter. And then, the smell, mint. He was trying to sneak away. I pulled the heavy flashlight from Adrian's belt. Where he had clipped it, I moved, following the scent, my sneakers silent on the floor. I tracked him. Not like a waitress, but like a hunter. I heard him fumble with the door handle, the one leading to the outer catwalk. He pulled it open, silhouetted for a second against the faint glow of the rail yard lights. I raised the flashlight. Going somewhere, Casper? I hit the switch. The beam, a blinding, white-hot circle of light, pinned him. He froze. One hand on the door, his face a mask of pure terror, the unlit cigarette dangling from his lips. I was not shaking, not even a little. You're not invisible anymore, and I said. And then, from outside, a new sound began. It was a low rumble. At first, then it grew. It was the sound of hundreds of men. They were cheering. Ava had done it. She had recorded my entire speech. She had recorded Duval's panicked confession about the data. She had rerouted it, and as soon as I cut the power, she had begun broadcasting it over the yard workers' own internal radio network. They all knew. The PA system clicked back on, now powered by a vermilion generator, and my own voice, angry and clear, flooded the night again. They are stealing from you. Kestrel had lost, not in a dark alley, but in the light, on their own turf, their power broken by the one thing they never counted on: the ghosts. Dawn broke over Mariner City, painting the sky in pale, washed-out shades of gray and rose. The air felt scoured, clean. The night shift shutdown had been a success. The Kestrel outfit, their financial network shattered and their reputation broken by the public humiliation at the rail yards, was hemorrhaging. The whispers on the street were that the organization was collapsing, its members scattering, their power evaporating not with a bang, but with a quiet final click as the lights went out. Adrian, his arm bandaged in a clean, black sling, did not operate like the police. He did not hand Casper Duval over to the non-existent Seaboard Anti-Racket Commission. His justice was more precise. He met Duval in a sparse, clean room. Duval, expecting a bullet, was visibly shaking. "You are not going to die, Casper," Adrian said, his voice calm, which was far more terrifying than if he had yelled. "You are going to do two things. First, you will personally oversee the complete legal dissolution of Skyward Kitchens. Every server, every asset, every contract, you will erase it from this city. Second." Adrian slid a stack of legal documents across the table. "You will sign the entirety of the Sun Hollow Foundation and every predatory mortgage it holds over to the newly formed Dockside Courts Tenants Union. You will do it at a press conference, and you will smile." Rhett was a different matter. He was not an enemy. He was a ghost, a coward who had betrayed me. He was not Adrian's to punish. He was handed over to the Harbor Council, a grim tribunal of retired longshoremen and union bosses who had worked the docks for 50 years. They did not beat him. They did not kill him. They sentenced him. He was assigned to 2 years of hard labor, scraping barnacles and hauling ice at the fish market, reporting every morning at 4 a.m., and a binding. Union-enforced restraining order was put in place, forbidding him from ever coming within 500 yards of Lila or me. It was not violence. It was responsibility. My old life was being systematically dismantled. 3 weeks after the shutdown, Adrian found me at the Juneberry Grill. I was turning in my apron for the last time. Dory hugged me, her eyes wet. "You give 'em hell, Captain," she whispered. Adrian drove me to the corner of Bay and Alder. The corner property that had been boarded up for 2 years was transformed. The boards were gone. The windows were clean and bright, and the front door was painted a deep, welcoming ocean blue. He stopped the car, got out, and handed me a single, heavy old-fashioned iron key. I looked up. A simple, carved wooden sign hung above the door, the letters clean and strong. Captain's table. My hand was shaking as I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly. I pushed the door open. The inside was clean, empty, and smelled of fresh sawdust and new paint. It was a blank canvas. And in the middle of the empty room, holding her stuffed seagull, was Lila. Dory was standing beside her, smiling. "Mommy!" Lila shouted, her voice echoing in the big, empty space. She dropped the bird and ran, launching herself into my arms. I knelt and caught her, burying my face in her hair. She smelled like apple juice and safety. "Mommy, Captain, we're home." "Home?" I held her tight, the tears finally coming, hot and happy. I looked over her small head at Adrian. He was leaning in the doorway, his sling gone, only a faint white scar visible on his forearm. He watched us, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were soft. He had kept his promise. Our opening night was 6 weeks later. The kitchen was a beautiful, chaotic symphony. Dory had come with me. She was my head chef. The dining room was packed, the air filled with laughter and the smell of roasting garlic and fresh bread. At 7:59 p.m., I glanced at the clock. Adrian was at his usual corner table, watching me. At 8 p.m. on the dot, the bell on our new blue door jangled. The owner of the Mariner Tavern came in, his staff behind him, then Sal's Pizza, then the grill cook from the diner down the street. One by one, our allies from the shutdown, the owners and staff of a dozen different restaurants, flooded in. They had all closed their own kitchens. They had turned our night of fear into a new, weekly ritual, a citywide celebration. Later, long after the last guest had gone, the restaurant was quiet, the kitchen was still warm, the steel counters clean, the air smelled of lingering basil and the fresh, cold rain that had just started outside the open back door. I was wiping down a counter, a fine dusting of flour from the last bread order still on the steel. I was exhausted, my muscles ached, and I had never been happier. I heard his footsteps. I did not need to turn. Adrian came up behind me. He did not speak, his arms wrapped around my waist, pulling me back against the solid warmth of his chest. I leaned my head back, resting it on his shoulder, closing my eyes. "It was a good night, Captain," he murmured into my hair. I turned in his embrace, my hands still dusted with flour, coming up to rest on his shirt. "It was," I said softly. He looked down at my hands, then at my face. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. He gently brushed his thumb across my cheek, and it came away white. "You've got a little—" I laughed, a sound that felt easy and light. "So do you," I said, and I reached up, rubbing my floury palm against his cheek, mirroring him. The kiss was not the desperate, storm-fueled collision from the safe house. This was slow and deep and sure. It was not a claiming, it was an agreement. It was the taste of victory and safety and home. His hands were gentle on my back, holding me, and mine were clasped behind his neck. It was a quiet, profound passion, a promise kept. Surrounded by the warm smells of my kitchen, he pulled back, his forehead resting against mine. "I protect you by my law, Mara," he said, his voice a low, binding oath. "Respect, loyalty, no lies." I looked around my kitchen, my sanctuary, the place I had built from nothing. "And I protect you with my light," I answered. "This is a kitchen. It's where people come to be decent, where they come to be fed. That's my law." He left soon after. I walked to the front of my dark, quiet restaurant by the door. I picked up a piece of white chalk and wrote on the large blackboard, right at the bottom, 8:00 p.m. closed for the ones we love. This time, it was not a surrender. It was not the end of a shift, marked by tears of exhaustion. It was a choice. It was my freedom. The camera pulls back, out the window, into the rainy Mariner City night. The lights of the town are bright, and under the single, warm, glowing sign of the captain's table, a new family has taken root. A single mother who found her power, a daughter who is safe, and a mafia boss who found a heart that had been washed clean by the night's rain. The knot, tied so tightly with fear, was finally, peacefully undone. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. If you enjoyed this, support us further by hitting that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.